Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming my March wrap-up. I read a ton of books this month, so let's get started. So the first book that I finished in the month of March was The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. Simpson? This is a contemporary novel about a professor named Don Tillman who has Asperger's, and he embarks on what he likes to call the Rosie Project. It was incredibly entertaining. There were some quotes that I liked that I tabbed. I thought it was such a fun contemporary. It's an adult contemporary. If you've been sick of YA tropes, I would highly recommend this. It is very different from any contemporary that I've read, though I haven't read a ton of adult contemporaries, so I will say that. But I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend. I believe I gave it 4 stars. The second book that I finished, which has become one of my favorite books of all time, and definitely is going to make it on my favorite books of the year, I'm pretty sure, and that is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in the Red Rising trilogy. I buddy read the whole trilogy with Tina from the Neverending Bookshelf, and as you can see, I loved this book. This was by far my favorite of the trilogy. It's probably my favorite of the covers, too. And there's not a lot I can say about it without spoiling it, but the direction that this story takes was just so much more interesting to me than Red Rising. This one is full of political intrigue, which I loved. I loved seeing more of the world and the society and new characters, and I just loved the direction this story took. There were plot twists in this one that literally floored me. Like, I was on the ground going, what? What? There were at least 2 of them that were that amazing, and I highly recommend this trilogy. Even if you didn't particularly love Red Rising, I would definitely recommend continuing with the series just because this book was so good. Next book that I finished was another contemporary, because that's apparently all that I was reading while I was buddy reading the Red Rising trilogy, and that was The First Time She Drowned by Carrie Kletter. I did really enjoy this. I really liked the cover. I really enjoyed the writing style, was the main reason that I loved this. I just thought the writing was really, really beautiful, and I think this is her debut novel, if I'm not mistaken, which was very impressive. It has some, I don't even know if it's considered magical realism or if it's just really vivid metaphors that the main character Cassie comes up with, but it was very, very different. It's very heavy. I will say that it is a heavier contemporary. And it's about this girl named Cassie who ends up in a mental hospital, is where she starts off in the book. And it just goes from there with friends she made there and what happens when she gets out when she turns 18. I will say there are trigger warnings for mild forms of child abuse, is the best way I can think to put it without spoiling anything. Just be aware of that if that's something that you're very sensitive about. It's definitely a subject in here, but I would highly recommend it. I think I gave this 4 stars as well. The next book that I finished was Morningstar by Pierce Brown. This is the 3rd and final book in the Red Rising trilogy. This one was better than Red Rising. It wasn't quite as good as Golden Sun for me, but as you can see, I still really loved it. There were parts of it that were kind of slow, but only slow in, like, this series. Like, in any other book, that would not be considered slow, but because this series is so fast-paced, there were parts of it that seemed slow. I didn't particularly love the very, very, very end, like the last couple pages end, but I'm also very intrigued to see where his new trilogy goes. Then I randomly, like incredibly randomly, picked up Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I've never read this. I never had to read it for school. It's just a classic that I picked up at the thrift store. And I will say that I really enjoyed the beginning of this. I liked the dystopian world that was set up here, where books are banned and they're being burned, and firemen have become, instead of putting out fires, they start them to destroy books. And it was just a very interesting concept. But it kind of went downhill a little bit as the story went on. I thought the last 50 or so pages was kind of weird and I didn't love it as much, but I did really enjoy it. I read Binge by Tyler Oakley. If you saw any of my book hauls, I bought a couple of YouTuber books, and I picked them up because normally I do enjoy YouTuber books, just seeing how they came to be and why they started their channel and everything, even if it's a YouTuber that I don't really watch. And I was hoping that would be the case with this, and I didn't particularly love this book. I think I gave it 3 stars because I do think Tyler's story is important, especially a lot of his relationships that he discusses in here, like toxic relationships, which I thought was really good and was by far my favorite part of the book. But I don't really get along with a lot of Tyler's humor. It's a little too crude and out there for me, so it's the same reason I don't watch Tyler's videos. But it's a very well put together book. It has pictures. It's got very nice heavy paper. Like, it's a very beautiful book. And I am kind of sad that I didn't love it, but I'm happy that I read it. Next up was another mild disappointment that I was really upset about. And that was More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. I wanted to love this book so bad because I really like Adam, and I've been watching him in a lot of booktubers videos, and he made his own booktube, and I was really excited to read this because I've heard great things, but I've also heard some mediocre things. And I didn't love it. I think the biggest problem was I really didn't like any of the characters. I did not like our main character. Aaron annoyed me to no end. His little gang of friends were just horrible people. I didn't really like his mom. His brother was kind of rude to him. The whole backstory with his dad, and the only character I didn't really hate was Thomas, but I didn't particularly love him either. And I didn't really like the whole gang aspect of it, but I did really, really enjoy the sci-fi aspects of it, which was the Loteo procedure and the logistics behind it and the side effects that it can cause, and just the idea that if something like Loteo existed in our world, it would be just as popular as it is in this story. Which is terrifying, that if anybody could forget a particular thing that they wanted to forget and they had the ability to get rid of it, they would totally do it in real life, and that's really scary. Because if you get rid of your memories and take that easy way out, there's no growing from those memories, even if they were horrible memories that you had to live through. So it was a really interesting concept, and I really liked that part of it, but as far as the characters and the actual storyline, I didn't particularly love it that much. I believe I gave it 3.5 stars. And I do plan to read Adam's other books, because I really want to read his one that's coming out later this year, which is called They Both Die at the End. But I'm also planning on picking up History Is All You Left Me and hoping that I love that one more than this one. Next up, I actually got a Kindle, surprise. I don't really use it that much because I really don't enjoy reading ebooks, but I was actually contacted by the author of this middle grade series, and he asked me to review his book. I was contacted through Goodreads, and I was like, yeah, sure. He pitched it as Percy Jackson and Narnia-esque. And I really enjoy middle grade most of the time, so I was all for it. And that, little intrigue was enough to get me interested in it. His name is J.T. Cope IV, and his book is called Countryside, the Book of the Wise. I hope you can see that. It's a fun little middle grade story. I wrote a full, relatively detailed Goodreads review of it, because he gave me his book as an ebook in exchange for an honest review, and I honestly really, really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. And it's actually one of the first ebooks that I've, fully finished. Normally I give up on ebooks, halfway through, but I really enjoyed this one, and I really liked the magic system in it. It's very much they have the regular elemental magic, like earth, fire, water, air, but they also have the elements of light and life, I think, was another one. There were 7 of them. I went over them in my Goodreads review. It's been a week. I forget what all of them were. It was just, I definitely see the connection to Percy Jackson. I see a little bit of the connection to Narnia as well, so I do think that's a good way to describe it. If you want to know more detail, please go read my Goodreads review. I did spend a decent amount of time explaining the magic system and everything on there. I really love the main character. I liked his friends. I liked his family. His uncle was my favorite character in the book, and I'm really excited to read the sequel. I'm actually planning on ordering this book in physical copy and its sequel from Amazon in the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited that I loved this book and that the author sent it to me and that I actually enjoyed it, which doesn't happen that often. The next book that I finished was The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid, and I loved this so much. This is definitely a contender for my favorite books of the year. I just thought the concept of Diabolics was the most interesting thing, and I knew the premise of this book going into it, that she would have to take Sidonia's place. Her name is Nemesis, and she goes and takes her human being Sidonia's place, and she basically has to become her, even though Diabolics don't really have human emotions, supposedly. And the story takes off from there, and it was so much more than I thought it was going to be. This cover is beautiful. I didn't know it was a series, but I can definitely see by the ending how it could become a series, so I'm kind of excited for it, but I'm also kind of scared that it's going to ruin the way this ended. But highly recommend if you are remotely interested in sci-fi. This was a great one. I loved Nemesis as a character. I love that she was like super ruthless as well as being kind of human. I really liked our other main character, Tyrus. He was really fun to read from, and I don't want to give anything away because I really feel like this book is a really good one to go into kind of blind. And then I realized I hadn't read my Cassandra Clare book for the month, and the month was almost over. So I binge read City of Glass in 2 days. This is a reread for me. From what I remember, I read The Mortal Instruments probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago almost, and I didn't really like them because the main reason being I don't like Clary. Clary's our main character, which is a problem if I really don't like her. Jace and Simon didn't annoy me as much as they usually do in this book, like they did in the first two. But Clary still absolutely drives me insane. But the plot of this one is way more interesting than the first two, and I love how fast it takes off, and it just doesn't let you go till the end of the book, which is why this is probably my favorite book in the series. But yeah, I think I give this one 4 stars. And then lastly, my most anticipated book of the entire year probably came out a couple of days ago. And if you've seen me on any social media in the last couple of days, I'm sure you know what it is. And that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. First of all, can we just appreciate this? Also, this is just beautiful. It's so pretty. Both physically and what's actually inside it, because it was amazing. And Jill can attest to this. I was freaking out, crying, sobbing last night when I finished it. It was like 11:30 at night. I really should have been sleeping, but I couldn't put it down. And the only reason it took me 2 days to read this is because I didn't have any time whatsoever to read it when the day it came out, because I went and saw Beauty and the Beast and I worked all day. And then Wednesday I was super busy, but I just sat down all day yesterday on Thursday and read the whole thing. So I thought this was going to be a trilogy. Apparently it's only a duology, but I'm actually super excited about that. And as with all of Laini Taylor's books that I've read, there's no point in giving a synopsis because it doesn't make any sense. There is a synopsis, but it doesn't make any sense until you read the book, and then as you're reading, you're like, oh, that's what that meant. So I'm just going to read you the first line of the prologue, which is, "On the second Sabbath of 12th moon, in the city of Weep, a girl fell from the sky. Her skin was blue, her blood was red." That's all you need to know. That's all I knew going into it, to be honest. I've heard Jill say this, but it's so true. This book is not going to be for everybody because Laini Taylor's writing isn't for everybody. Like, if you don't like flowery, pretty writing, you probably won't like her books, which I know a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do, and I'm definitely one of those people. Laszlo, who is the main character in this story, is just one of my new favorite characters of all time. He's just too precious for this world and needs to be protected at all costs. I don't even have words. Like, I just finished this last night and I still don't have like a coherent review in my head, and I'm not sure that I can have a coherent review because I was kind of the same way about Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Because there's no explaining Laini's books until you've read them. Or it gets really confusing and people are like, what does that even mean? And I'm like, I don't know, but it was great. I'm just rambling at this point. Highly recommend. Definitely read it if you love Laini's writing. Super excited for the sequel. Was that gonna fit in frame? Yeah. So these are all the books that I read in the month of March. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.